This is what it's all about, and this is the part that's being missed, and this is what pisses me off to no end. Is that we all talk a big game about brotherhood. We all talk about being brothers, but you got to walk that walk, man. Mm-hmm. Like that's the problem. There's so many people, and I'm not saying I'm perfect either. Like I've had my run-ins with people too, but an asshole's an asshole.
You don't say.
Yeah, exactly. It's so important. This job is a blue-collar, dirty, snotty, bloody, get your ass kicked type of job. I don't care if it's volunteer career.
It is.
But you have to be exposed to that. And when we don't expose our own to that, how can we expect them to perform under the conditions when it's time to perform?
You can't.
Right.
You can't.
Aaron,
and is that who you would want coming for your family?
Well, that's right. I mean, of course, right? And so what you guys were able to do in Burning in the Bayou was exactly that. You just said it before. Your nozzle man was probably a younger kid. It's probably never made a push like that in his life. Yeah. And you know what?
Not a lot of guys have.
Right. And the thing is that what they learned very quickly was, holy shit, this is real. Hey guys, Jeremy, National Fire Radio, as always, with my friend and comrade, Robert Ridley. Rob, good evening, sir.
Good evening, Jeremy.
And, of course, no stranger to the National Fire Radio family, Aaron Heller. Sir, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me again.
Aaron's been on the show once before, so he's a veteran. I think you're actually the first guest to be on twice, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get your name on a whole different list, which is... no, it doesn't count. He doesn't count. So anyway, here we are. We brought Aaron in tonight. We asked Aaron to come back. We had the luxury of spending luxury. There was no luxury about it, but we'll get into that.
There was definitely no luxury.
Aaron runs a incredible training company called On Scene Training Associates, OSTA. These guys are everywhere, and the lineup of instructors, Aaron, that you guys have is incredible, and we're going to get into all that. But the reason why we asked Aaron back tonight to be on the show with us is to go over a weekend that we spent down in Thibodaux, Louisiana, probably about a month ago now.
Yeah, it's been a month.
And Rob and I had the luxury, again, that word, but no, it wasn't a luxury. It was hot, sweaty, wet. It was terrible, but we'll talk about it. We had the fortune to be down there with Aaron and his cast of characters who performed some incredible training in Louisiana. And Rob and I really were taken back by the whole experience. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to just talk about the training culture in the fire service and really talk about, Aaron, your part and what you guys have done to really push the envelope with training, realistic training, and so on. So thanks for joining us tonight on the show. You're a friend, not just somebody on the show, but you and I, we talk quite often. I know you talk with Rob as well, and so on. So you're a friend, and we're honored to have you here tonight. So
yeah, thanks for coming back.
We just, right? I mean, like you didn't have anything else going on,
right?
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, right.
Nothing. I have nothing. All these evenings, I just sit home wondering what I'm going to do next.
We owe your manager a lot.
This is right. This is a guy that hasn't been home probably in a month from training. I mean, they're somewhere every other weekend. You guys are.
It's been a really busy fall.
So let's do this. Let's just hop into on-scene training. Let's talk right about it. So give me a little background on how you guys started, and then we'll bring it full speed to where we are today.
Yeah, so on-scene training, it started about 16 years ago now. I was doing drills for some of the local fire companies around us that really just needed that next level, or maybe they just needed to hear it from a different voice instead of their chiefs, because everybody gets kind of tone deaf when it's the same person delivering it. Same within my department, too. They hear it from me over and over again, and they're like, who gives a shit?
Right.
So they needed to hear it from somebody else. So I was that somebody else at the time. And my ex-wife is a forensic auditor. And she basically said, listen, I'd really appreciate that we start an LLC or something before you screw up and we lose our house. So, because she had a lot of faith in me.
Right, yeah, right.
And so we did. So we started an LLC, and that's how on-scene training was born. And it was really just local drills and stuff like that in South Jersey and Central Jersey.
I think what's interesting about that, and I know that everybody's dealing with it from the small town department to the big city departments, sometimes we need to hear it from a third party.
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
I mean, we take for granted, what we know in our departments, and we might have some cream of the crop guys in our own departments that have a message to share, but because we know their backstory or we know a little bit more about them or choose not to
Just have
listen
a prejudice
and tone,
against them.
Yeah, prejudice against them. Right. Absolutely, Rob. I mean, so being a third party is huge. And so there's that niche there where, the student's going to learn more from an outsider than an insider.
In most cases,
Yeah.
that works that way.
Yeah. So fast forward, I mean, through 15 years, because I really want to talk about Thibodaux and
Sure.
the Louisiana experience, but, through those 15 years, you have made a name for yourself in the training end of things because you've been able to align yourselves with just some of the cream of the crop names. I mean,
Yeah.
can we talk about your instructors? And I mean, I'm floored when I was looking at bios the other night on your website because a couple of the guys are doing it on tap for us coming up, and just reading the bios of the guys you have and so on. It's a testament to what you guys are doing because there's a lot of training companies out there. There's a lot of training pages, but how many bring forth the pedigree that you have? I don't know. That's up for debate.
Not only that, but just like before we jump into the whole situation in Thibodaux and what we did, like no instructor talking down to a student, none of the things that I've seen in the past with instructors who are like up here on this level, and you don't understand because you're not on this level and you're down here, and maybe one day you can come up here. And I was just so taken aback by the like the human element of your people relating down to the students and making them not feel inferior.
That is something that I never said. I never said to our guys, "Hey, you never big league somebody," because I never had to.
Right.
Because they were the right people and they never would. But I can tell you, as a young guy who was going to classes, and I was meeting people when I was in my 20s, and I was going to a lot of classes and trying to kind of learn my way and understand things because I had this voracious appetite to learn about firefighting. And I knew I couldn't get it just in the little town that I was living in New Egypt, and even in Hamilton. We were kind of stuck on our island. We weren't getting it from other places and learning from other people. So I knew enough to keep my mouth shut and really learn, and then try and bring it back and show these guys what I was learning, which sometimes was a hurdle in itself because I was this young guy bringing all these ideas, just like young guys are today, bringing their ideas to the firehouse, and the old guys are like, screw you, man. You're just a kid. This is how we do it. But so I had these amazing examples, and I don't know that it was ever a conscious decision on my part, but I thank God that I figured it out, even subconsciously. I remember sitting in classes with the likes of Danny Noonan, who's retired FDNY,
right,
and he was a legend in his day, and sitting in his class, sitting in Ray McCormick's classes, and now these guys are good friends, but back then I just looked up to them and went, wow, these guys, and they were young at the time. Noonan maybe not, but guys like Ray and guys like Champo and I remember going to University of Illinois. I went to Fire Service Institute for the first time at University of Illinois, and I took their written survival trainer stuff. And here's Bob Hoff teaching. Bob went on to become the commissioner in Chicago, but at the time he was a BC or something of that nature. And there was Donnie Hade from FDNY who retired as a chief in SOC as a BC. Running
40-something years, I believe, right?
Oh, yeah, and a hardcore Marine and just this salty dude. He was a lieutenant back then when I met him. So this is a long time ago, right? But I remember watching these guys move and work and watching them do things on the drill ground. And I just remember thinking to myself, and I was in my 20s, and I remember thinking to myself, man, what it must take to be one of them.
Yep.
And they never once big leagued me. I was wearing a helmet from this little place in New Egypt, New Jersey, but they respected that I wanted to come all the way there and pay my way and learn from them. And I took it in and thought, man, how cool is it that these dudes afterwards will sit down and have a beer with me and tell me fire stories.
Absolutely.
Bob Pressler was another one. He and Lombardo, they're still going, man.
Yep.
These guys are legends. And I was blessed that 20-some years ago when they were really young and in their prime, although I think those guys are still in their prime at this rate, but I had the good fortune to learn from them, and they never once big leagued you. Nobody did. And there's asshole instructors that did, but I just ignored those ones. I didn't want to go to their class again. And I see some today that are doing that here and there, and I hear about it, but you won't get that from the good guys, the guys that are in it because they want you to be better firemen.
Right.
And they love the job. You know, Roger Kendrick teaches for me. He's a Boston fireman. He's a lieutenant on on Engine 39. And we were teaching this weekend in Maine. And when Roger introduced himself to the students, he goes, I'm Roger Kendrick. I'm a lieutenant with 39 Engine in Boston. And I'll tell you why I'm here, because I love like-minded guys who want to learn about being firemen.
Amen.
And I love being around firemen who want to be firemen.
Right.
And you know what? The 20 students or whatever that were in that class, they bought in immediately because they saw that he was genuine. And here's this guy who's, he's been in a lot of places in Boston, been on the job a long time, owns a very successful business, but yet he was there for them because he wanted to be a fireman just like them. And those are the kind of guys that work for On Scene, and they're the only kind of guys that will ever work for On Scene.
And I think that just nails it, right? I mean, that sums it all up, because a lot of what I talk about, we're not the training guys, right? I bring in guys like you if we want to talk about training and talk about engine company or truck company work or whatever, right?
Right.
We bring in guys that have the pedigree behind them to talk about that. Rob and I and the rest of the guys in National Fire Radio, we're about tradition and culture and the brotherhood and so on. And for me, that's, there's a big part of training that I think gets missed. And that's when we're done on the drill ground, when we're done stretching the lines and throwing the ladders, that we can come back and crack a beer and we're just brothers. Yeah. We're family, and we can sit around and bust balls and tell stories, because so many lessons are learned just from sitting around after the sun goes down and telling stories. And I think that's hugely important, because there are people that get caught up in their own, their own egos. Absolutely. Thank you, Rob. Well done. But, and for me, part of that is, when you get to go away, when somebody's willing to go get that external training, like you said, when you were a young kid from New Egypt in a small town and you want to go somewhere to learn because you wanted to learn, it needs to be an experience. It shouldn't just be the 8 to 5 on a training ground and then you have to find your way.
Right.
I think all encompassing aspects of the fire service needs to include not only the physical training, but the mental training, the brotherhood, the camaraderie, and everything that goes along with that. And sometimes that's missed. And so the one thing I did notice about Aaron, yourself, and all your guys is that you were relatable from the street level on down with every single guy and girl on the training ground when I was with you guys, that at the end of the day, you'd crack a beer or have a smile and a laugh with anyone. And it didn't matter where you came from or who you are. And when you talk about those guys that you sat through that influenced you growing up through the fire service, that was it. That's the draw. The draw is they're just real. They're just good people.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with good people and good things happen. I agree.
It's been a blessing. I've said this before, and I know last time we talked, I said the same thing. But when you get the chance to live out these little kids' dreams, we all, as little kids, I want to be on a fire truck. If I couldn't play pro baseball, I was going to be a fireman. Well, it worked, and whether I knew it or not, it worked. But man, there's so many people that would kill to be you today, to be in that seat, to be in that front seat of that rig, right. Or to be, or guys who only have the ability to see some of these guys online, or read their stuff in Fire Engineering or Firehouse Magazine, or go on to Fire Engineering Training Minutes and watch a Champ video, right. So for us and for those students to be able to be there and relate, they deserve that. And especially if they're paying you, man, you should not take that lightly. These people, I can tell you, Burning and Bayou, I believe we had over 100 registrations. My guess would be a third of those paid themselves. Wow. That's not cheap, man. No. I mean, and we didn't charge enough to make any money. I can tell you that. But think about it. They paid $300 and some for us. Then they paid for an airfare, or they drove down, and then they paid a little bit for a hotel, So in the end, they made a big investment. We owe it to them that we should give them every bit of us. That's the attitude. That's the right attitude, right? That's how I feel.
There was a time where you and I went through this engine company operations, and we were doing the 2.5, and I was like, man, I don't feel like I'm getting this right. And you're like, yeah, like try this and try that. And afterwards, a kid came up to me and was like, well, you're a lieutenant in New York. Like, I was like, well, like, slow it down. It's where I work.
Yeah.
It's a state. It's not the city. But like, still, it's like
a really big state.
Yeah. But he said, he's like, yeah, but like, you had no qualms about saying like, I'm not doing this right. Can you show me? And I said, well, yeah, that's like, this is the best. This is the absolute best environment. And I said, you know what? Like, there's a little bit of a fleeting part of me that was embarrassed to say like, hey, I'm not sure I'm handling this 2.5 right. But like, this is for all intents and purposes, this is a circle of trust where I can say that, and this is a perfect time to learn versus being on the fire ground. So anytime you're here, ask any of these guys, and they'll take the time to show you, the way.
But I think that's one of those things too, where nowadays in the fire service, kids are afraid to say they don't know. They're afraid to let their guard down, right? Like, we're so guarded now.
Yeah, I think that's because of all the bullshit that happens on social media. You get picked apart, you get bullied, you get torn up. The hazing that used to happen in a firehouse was nothing compared to what goes on.
It's different
in today's
type.
world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, now it's mean. Back then, it was funny. At
Yeah.
least I thought it was funny.
I call it character building.
Even when it was happening to me, I thought it was funny.
It's character building, We're building
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
But Aaron, I agree. But I think now more so than ever, it's okay to say you don't know, or ask that question and say, hey, I don't think I got that right. So you're telling me we need to do X, Y, and Z. But kids are afraid to do that. And I look around, like when we're doing training and things like that, and they're like, did everybody get that? Can we move on to the next thing? And everybody just sits there with that blank stare and they shake their head. They're not competent in what they just learned or saw, but they're afraid to talk about it.
A good instructor will go through it and then go through it a little more.
Yeah.
Because, we always joke that the only one dumb question is can I buy you another beer? That's a dumb, Bart Simpson told us that's the dumbest question in the world. You can always buy me another beer.
Of course.
But, or in my case, tequila. But,
Nice.
but it's true. They do hold back. I was teaching in Maine this weekend, and there were some salts in the class who definitely have been to a lot of fires. And then there were some really young kids, and it's a very kind of rural part of Maine.
Yeah.
Where these kids hadn't had the experience yet. And I asked a couple questions, and I could just see, looking out at the crowd, that like, all right, they didn't quite get that.
Right.
So I just need to reinforce that a little bit, and then it's cool. And at least they didn't ask, but I think I gave them a little more. Maybe I didn't answer everything they should have.
Right. I think it also goes the other way too, though. I think also, we have this false sense of confidence too, that, some of these kids, and not even kids, I mean, adults, right?
Sure.
I mean, they have this false sense of confidence. Like, yeah, I know how to do that.
Yeah. We had a guy in the class this weekend, and I was watching him move, and I'm thinking, man, this dude's a good fireman.
Yeah.
I would take this guy on my rig any day of the week.
Right.
And honestly, I think his name was Tom Jackson, and he's from West Bath, Maine. And I'm thinking he's kind of salty. He's got a gray mustache like mine, The guy's been around a while. And at the end of the class, afterwards, I said to him, I said, bro, you got it together, man.
I love that.
You got the future here.
Right.
And he says to me, he goes, yeah, I'm doing okay. It's only been a year. I said, what? The dude did 25 years in the Navy, retired out of the Navy and was bored and joined the volunteer fire department.
Outstanding.
So he'd just gone through his Fire 1 and Fire 2 and through Maine in the last year, in 2018.
Right.
And I'm like, man, this dude was like that good. And the more we got talking, and I'm watching him work, and we did some really good burns all weekend. And I'm thinking, wow, like, you're the future. And then I realized, shit, you're almost my age, but you're the future. Yeah. It was cool.
When we go back to your staff too. Like I think, like the second day of the training, going to document the fast stuff that was happening with Dave Gallagher, going over stuff with Chief Crawford, and he said something about making the harness, and like you said, that look, and just. I was like, yeah, why don't we do it? Like,
right. Chief Crawford
show me what you guys know, because it might not be, I might be thinking of something different.
Sure.
So Dave jumped right into it, and like, it was cool, but at the same time, a little like, I was like, man, like, I hope these kids learn that they can ask this question in this environment, because they were relieved that, like, all right, good, I didn't have to be the one.
So the older guy asked the question.
Yeah.
You broke the ice for them.
Right. I'm like, show me, like, let's see what this, and like, I mean, I think I got that. Just in that morning, there was probably 20 minutes of video on my phone that ate up almost half the memory of watching Dave, though, go through with Chief Crawford and do this just very down to earth. This is how we're going to do it, guys. Like this, like just almost like I remember somebody say we're going to walk in like gentlemen.
Yes.
And they were very gentlemanly about everything that they were doing. And it was just awesome to be a part of it.
There's a guy, Chief Crawford's a good example. I met Chief Crawford at FDIC in probably 1996 or 97. My first year going, whenever it was, in a bar. And he was sitting by himself. We got talking, and we became friends that day. We've been friends ever since. We have gone through major ups and downs. Losing EJ was like his best, he was his buddy, man, and they were super tight. And Crawford's the guy who called me when EJ died that night. When the phone rings at 3:30 in the morning, it's Jim Crawford.
Something's up.
Shit. Yeah. But watching him teach, and he hadn't taught with On Scene until a couple of years ago. Really, after EJ passed, it brought us all together. And he and I had been friends, and he was doing his thing, and we were doing ours, and we had tremendous respect. And if somebody really wanted something that Crawford did, I would just tell him, don't hire On Scene.
Yeah,
call Jimmy Crawford.
That's the right thing.
This guy's the best. You know, it's no different. Like Man in the Machine right now. I don't teach it.
Right.
Do I have guys that could absolutely do it who've done lots of machinery rescues? Yeah. I grew up in a junkyard.
Right.
My kid's here watching us. He's been around. He saw my old man in the junkyard.
Right.
I could do that. But you know what? There's a company out there who originated it.
That's right.
So why would I take Mark Gregory's thunder and PL Vulcans when I think they're so good at it? I hired them to do my department.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So you have that respect for each other. At least a lot of the, I don't want to say older, but a lot of the more established companies, we try not to step on each other. And I think On Scene has done a very, very good job of being very, very respectful in that process.
Well, you just hit on that. I just want to jump in. Right? Yeah. You talked about being respectful, and you use P.L. Vulcan and yourself, and you talk about that mutual respect. And like this morning, I went to post something on social media, and I took a picture of a mug that we got from New England Fools, and I thought it was 190 Leatherworks, and he sent us a message, and it said, "Hey, that's actually," and was it Brotherhood Leatherworks was one.
Okay,
but like the guy said to me, "It's like I respect him too much as a business owner to not like get that corrected." And because I told him, I was like, man, I feel like such a jackass for doing that. And I even called up the other guy and apologized to him. And he said, no, he's like, you know what? Like, 190 Leatherworks is a great company. Like I wouldn't, like, I'm happy that he did that, and I would do the same to him. But like, there was that mutual respect. And we were kind of talking about it a little bit before the show, but like, I think that's missing. Is that mutual respect?
That's what this whole thing's about.
Some of it's missing. There ain't no doubt.
But this is what it's all about, and this is the part that's being missed, and this is what pisses me off to no end. Is that we all talk a big game about brotherhood. We all talk about being brothers, but you got to walk that walk, man. Mm-hmm. Like that's the problem. There's so many people, and I'm not saying I'm perfect either. Like I've had my run-ins with people too, but an asshole's an asshole.
You don't say.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what I'm saying? Like this is that disconnect. There's plenty of training companies out there, right? Fantastic ones, mediocre ones, and terrible ones.
Yep.
You know what's lacking is maybe there needs to be more respect for each other, because here's the deal. At the end of the day, there's plenty of firefighters that need training and tutelage, right? And there's plenty of companies that can offer it. Right. Respect each other. There's enough work to go around. Right? Yeah. And that's just on the training end, right?
Yeah, and if you think you're going to get, you're going to put your kids through college on your training business,
right?
Get a clue, man, because it ain't going to work that way. You might get a little extra here and there, and you might hit it big on some deal, or you might take advantage of somebody and hit it big, but you'll only do it once.
Yeah,
and I've been doing this a long time. Maybe I just haven't figured out how you make the millions.
But Aaron, the biggest thing, man,
that's not what this is about.
Yeah, but you know where you made the millions? You've educated. I don't know. Like, I mean, just in that brief glimpse of looking at what happened in Thibodaux with Burning in the Bayou, you've educated young firefighters to produce a safer and better product, not only for the citizens that they're serving, but for their own departments. Like, I mean, like I said, like, just blown away by watching you and your staff take people of all skill sets. That's the other thing, right?
All skill sets.
So you have somebody
that was
like
a little bit of a juggling act.
Smells bells and people who fell like 15 years into it, right?
Yeah.
And then
this guy with his saying.
I love it.
We gotta write these.
I'm serious. You got to copyright that one, man.
LLC coming out next
That's
fall.
right.
No, but and then you have, and I'm going to do a conference tripping in the bayou. No,
Nice.
but like, and then you have like brand new boot firefighters.
Yeah.
And the ability not only to roll into taking somebody like me and going over a point to taking somebody that's brand new and going over a point with them, but then like getting them together, like it just every day of the conference was happening, and that was just it was humbling to watch.
It was a constant evolution down there with this, and I can't be more proud of what went on there and with our guys, and with the 100 that showed up. And
yeah. So let's paint the picture, right? So we've got a lot of people listening and following along, but I mean, you've been down there before, right? Maybe you could give us some history behind the relationship.
Yeah. So I've been going to the Bayou for probably 10 years now, maybe a little less than that, 8 to 10 years, I would say. Started because Kidda Fire trainers that make like the trailers and mock-ups hired me to go to Bayou Cane, Louisiana, which I didn't even know that existed, what that was. And they hired me, and Billy Hobson went with me to go show them how to not just utilize the trailer with pushing buttons and setting fires, but how to teach in that trailer and maximize that trailer to the best that it could possibly be. So they hired us, and we went down there, and again, these guys didn't know these couple Yankees for Adam, and it worked, and we taught them how to do it, and it went really cool. And they had a Firehouse Innovations door, right, sitting there on the pallet, still in the wrappers, basically. I'm like, what are you doing with this thing?
Yeah, let's
like,
go.
Come on, man, you should be breaking shit here. And they're like, yeah, we just got that, and we really don't know much about it. And so I was due to go out late that afternoon or that evening. And I said, well, if you want, why don't we just put it together, and I'll show you how it works. Billy and I stayed there for like 4 hours teaching forcible entry.
Nice.
And it wasn't part of the contract,
right.
but it was the right thing to do. And we made friends with these guys, and we had a blast, and it worked. And then after that, the chief was very newly appointed chief, and you got to meet Ken Emel.
Yeah.
And shout out to Ken, because Ken just went through a major medical, holy shit.
Really?
He just had triple bypass the other day. 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
Today's
Bayou Cane
chief of Bayou Cane, who was our interior safety officer during the burn.
Yeah.
And who gave the speech and
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
on Friday night. One of the finest chiefs I think I've met.
Don't be that guy.
Yeah, don't be that guy speech. Yeah, totally great guy who has really transformed that fire department. But he had just become the chief.
Oh my gosh.
And we went through all this, and he said, you know what else can you teach? So I said, well, we can do this, this, and this. And he said, all right, well, I want to bring you back down here in my budget, not part of this.
Yeah.
So that got us in to that area, and they realized, hey, these guys aren't, here to steal your money and run and go back to North Jersey. And it just kind of evolved, and we started meeting chiefs, and they started coming to stuff. And the next thing you know, Terrebonne Parish and Lafourche Parish, a lot of those fire departments in those two parishes started bringing us in to do stuff with them, because LSU is their main provider of fire training. LSU provides canned courses, book smart courses that you need, and they don't provide kind of what we do. Right. We can't replace what they do, but they absolutely can't do what we do. Right. And so that's how it's evolved, and it's been freaking awesome since. I mean, I've made lifelong friends there that there's no doubt.
The relationships are unbelievable.
Yeah, there's no doubt that if something happened to my family tomorrow, half a dozen of those guys would be on a plane up here.
I believe that.
To take care of them.
100%.
They are the best people. They're just such cool people. They love the fire service. Yeah. They love it. And Thibodaux, of all places, it's such a cool little place. Like, where the hell's Thibodaux, Louisiana?
I didn't even know how to say it.
Yeah, exactly.
The way it's spelled,
I kept saying Thibodaux, and it's not.
Before we got there and I spoke to a local, I had no idea where I was going.
Did you understand what the local said?
No, it was tough.
I did.
Because sometimes you need a translator between Jersey and Southern Louisiana, Bayou talk, Yeah.
But I want to talk about this. The relationships you have down there and you've planted over the last 8 to 10 years was just evident from the second we got there. Rob got there before me. I flew in for a day and a half, and I was out. Right. It was a last-minute type of thing. But Rob was there for a little bit longer, took the training. and so on. But just painting the picture, this is an old hospital, right? So this is Louisiana. It's about an hour outside of New Orleans.
Yeah, south of New Orleans.
So we fly into New Orleans, rent a car, we drive out into the middle of the bayou country, right?
Way down yonder, yeah.
Yeah. and then all of a sudden, yeah, I mean, you're talking, you know, some real tough neighborhoods, and you know, it's not northern New Jersey, I can tell you that, right? And then all of a sudden you come to Thibodaux, and it's just a beautiful little city.
Yeah,
a lot of built up infrastructure, you know,
and
commercialization,
and a lot more coming.
Yeah,
a lot has happened in that whole region in the last 10 years that I've been going there.
Right,
really building out, and not building out in a crazy way like we have here. We have
controlled.
We have stupid urban sprawl in New Jersey, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, down there they're doing it the right way.
So they had this Thibodaux Volunteer Fire Department is arguably the largest volunteer fire department in the country.
Could be.
When we were down there, they told me that they had 497 people on the roster. Yeah. 500 members on the roster.
And I want to make this very clear for the viewers and the listeners that are out there. This is not. We have 40 interior firefighters, 10 exterior firefighters, and the rest are all like the old guys. Right, like this was a department that turns out, and when they say they have 497 members, that's what's hitting the street.
Yeah, I'd say as of today, they probably have at least 250 to 300 sets of gear.
Yeah,
issued right now.
The best way it was explained to me, and I can't wait to start talking about all this, but best way it was explained to me was Dan McCauley and Paglione and a couple other guys. They said, yeah, we were down here one time, and they had a job.
Oh, yeah.
And so we hopped on and rode with them.
They did.
It's like we got there, and it looked like a fire scene in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
There were like 70 people in gear in SCBA standing in the front lawn for a building fire.
On a nighttime fire, they will average 70 to 100 people in turnout gear and SCBA.
It's outrageous.
That's
that
no
is
kidding.
Outrageous.
Which makes it a hell of a lot easier to run a conference when you got that kind of resources.
Yes.
Think they got the equipment to equip 100 guys at a fire.
And we had the ability. They were so nice to open their doors to us, and we shot some content down there and so on. But this is a fire department that has 4th, 5th, and 6th generations on the line.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at the names, and you look at like Chris Riviere was the historian
too, right?
Oh my God!
Yeah, right.
What a guy! Just meeting him and his family, and that whole. But that's just one,
right?
And and he was our interior safety on the RIT, and I met him the first time we went to Thibodaux, and I just this guy is an attorney,
right? Who
is very, very well known throughout the region, is very, very good at his profession, but his love of the volunteer fire service is second to none that I've ever met.
I saw it firsthand.
Yet here's a man who will sit in federal trials in New Orleans or somewhere else, and in the same minute, first thing that morning, what's he do? He throws all his gear on and goes and runs their tower and does 110 flights, because those guys are huge on tower runs and remembering what happened here on September 11th. I've never seen people like this. I mean,
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You look at you go on Chris's Facebook or his Instagram or whatever, and he does. Before he goes to a trial, he'll throw his turnout gear and SCBA on his back and do 110 flights. And this man's in his 60s, and he is just totally badass and
awesome
and an unbelievable gentleman.
Yeah.
And all those guys down there, the level of being gentlemen, and just the hospitality. And you can't say anything more than Southern hospitality, because they define Southern hospitality. That whole region does.
Even in so like we talk about the members having this lineage in this fire service. Yeah. That I'm leaving the hotel and checking out of the room or extending it because we're leaving the last day.
Right.
And I talked to, I think her name was Janet. Right? Was at the one at the front desk. And she had your number. Because we walked in and we said, Aaron said this, and she said, what did Aaron say? But
I don't know.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know him. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But
I make friends.
I'm well aware.
I explained to her what our platform was about.
Right.
So when we checked out, she had a picture that she shared with me of her. I think it was her grandfather had bought one of the first engines on the other side of the bayou.
Yeah, 308, and he built that firehouse.
Yeah.
Yes,
and it was
I remember that lady. Yeah, what a nice lady. She took good care of us, getting us registered. Yeah,
and it was just it was to me. I just sat there, awestruck for a moment, being like, man, and I like this. This is the hotel staff.
Yeah,
this woman's not a firefighter.
Yep.
But she knows the history, and the community values it so much.
So so being a volunteer fire company and such a community player. I mean, and this goes to the training, goes to the type of department they are.
Yeah.
But this is the type of department that it totally embraces their community. They're running salvage trucks, right? So they understand, one, it's part of the ISO rating down there, but two, they understand the value of customer service.
big time.
If there's a fire or a flood or anything that's affecting anyone in their community, they have equipment ready to respond with multiple people to mitigate a problem for a resident. Like, this is a full customer service. When you talk about a community-oriented fire department, Thibodaux, Louisiana exemplifies that. I mean, I saw it firsthand.
They do. They
Captain
really
Nick.
do. I mean, they would have been, like the poster boys for Brunacini had
Yeah.
you known them. Chief Brunacini would have been using
Yeah.
their pictures in his
Right.
books.
You're right.
Mrs. Smith.
You're right.
Or, Mrs. Thibodaux or
Yep.
Mrs. Mrs. Boudreaux. Yeah, instead of Mrs. Smith, because they do. They exemplify it. They take such good care of their community, and then in turn, their community supports them like no.
Which
it's
I've never
unbelievable.
seen a community do what they do. You want me to talk about the fair?
Yeah,
they did?
you can.
Well,
Sure.
I was going to say before
Yeah,
we
go
get
ahead.
to the fair, just so,
Sure.
that community takes care of it, which is really how on-scene training was able to get this
Yes.
location.
Yes.
Because the owner of Rouse's Market, who was a
Yes.
great sponsor of this event,
Yeah.
and if you're in Southern Louisiana, please check out Rouse's Market.
Yeah, I don't think there's anywhere else you shop, but
Yeah, right.
Rouse's
But
Market. Exactly.
they came upon this property, and and Aaron, correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but they said, listen, as long as you guys need for training, don't worry about what we're going to be doing here,
Yeah,
because this building will be here for you guys to train in, because
yeah,
it's
we're not
important.
going to just tear it down on you. If you need to train in it, we'll leave it up. It's so we'll get to that. So I guess the building itself, the property is located right on Route 1, right in the city. Maybe 1,000 feet from the downtown, maybe a couple
right.
thousand feet
Yeah.
from downtown. It's a hospital that was built, I guess, probably in the 30s or 40s originally, and then added on, and it served many different uses as the hospital, and then as a mental health institution and some other things. It was sold, and Donnie Rouse bought it, who's the owner of Rouse's Markets. Rouse's Markets is like the big grocery store chain down there. They're they sponsor the New Orleans Saints.
Right.
These guys, they're the real deal.
Provided us lunch.
Provided us lunch, absolutely. I wish we had Rouse's up here, because man, you can go in there and it's just right what you would want. What a great store. But anyway, we're not selling their stuff. They can do it on their own. But we met with him. The chief in Thibodaux, and I got to say this, Chad Muir is the chief at Thibodaux.
Yeah.
He's been there a few years now as the chief. But just like everybody else, his lineage goes way back. His dad is a big member at Protector and Protector Fire, one of the companies, and cooks lunch for the guys on like Wednesdays and stuff. And it's such a family affair. And Chad, when we were down there doing a fire school for them, Chad said, hey, we might be able to get the hospital. And of course, me and Bart and whoever else was there were like, hospital? What do you mean hospital?
Yeah, right.
And
Are you talking about the old charity hospital?
yeah. And he's like, well, hop in the truck. We're going to go for a ride. And he took us over, and we looked at the hospital. I'm like, holy crap, man. This is like a fireman's playground.
Yeah.
And he said, well, before you leave, we're going to go, well, why don't we meet up with Donnie Rouse? Now, Mr. Rouse is a very busy man. He's a very important man in Louisiana from everything I could see. Yet he took the time to meet with us. We walked right into the corporate offices. We sat down at the conference table. He says, what do y'all want to do? And we explained it to him, and he goes, okay, my people will give you the paperwork. Just make sure the insurance stuff is good and all the documents are signed, and I can't wait. That'll be great. It's great for you guys. I'm glad I can do this for you.
Right.
And me and Bart, we're like sitting here like,
Floored.
holy shit.
Yeah, right.
If this was Jersey, they'd be like,
Oh, forget it.
they'd be throwing documents at
That's
us and
right,
reasons,
red tape.
and all these reasons why you can't do anything. And instead, he was nothing but embracing these guys and said, anything I can do for this fire department, these guys are the best. They've got that reputation throughout Louisiana that they are that good.
They are that good.
And they
They
really,
are.
and they've earned it. They've earned every bit of it. And like I said, Chief Mayor, Chad has been nothing but a gentleman and really a steward of it. And they want to get better, which is really cool. You know, they're a big hitter in their area, but they're not good enough in their eyes. And I love that because that's how I feel about every single call I go on, every drill I do, every class I run. It's not good enough. We could always do better. You know, it
was cool to, because like I've had this discussion with Jeremy about how like National Fire Radio, like when he asked me to do this, you know, and I said like, hey, if we work hard, we'll get where we're, you know, 1,000 likes, whatever. But like I said, I didn't have any expectations. And I walked in after every night when we were interviewing somebody, I felt reinvigorated into the fire service, and it was the boost that I needed to get me past a hump in my life. But then like coming down to Thibodaux, like just high off of the fire service coming out of there because of that attitude from their own members and even the members surrounding them.
Oh, yeah.
I was floored.
All the departments around there. I mean, we dealt with a department there who we had never dealt with before, who was a mutual aid partner of theirs. But, you know, like everywhere, we all have our little sandbox and they have their issues. Right. And that department sent like 3 or 4 people and sent us their tower ladder. I'd never trained that department. Yet I've been there dozens and dozens of times, driven through that town, driven past that firehouse. But the chief who had been there at the time was kind of, we don't need you guys.
Right, I get it.
And that was his call, you know. And I never was like, well, screw you, dude. You know, I always thought, well, one day maybe he'll do it. Well, the captain signed up. He came, and they were so cool. And it was the first time we met him, and now I'm in touch with him all the time. We talk back and forth on social media, and EJ said it best. You know, for those of you guys that are watching and listening, EJ Mascaro was one of our instructors. He passed away a couple of years ago, and he was really part of the heart and soul of On Scene. But EJ started this with, you know, when we go somewhere, we come in and we're all friends, but when we leave, we're all family.
Yeah.
And I live by that, and I believe in that wholeheartedly. And after that weekend, we had 100 more people in our family, you know, and it was awesome. So, but the hospital itself, getting back to that, you know, it's where else do you get to do things in a true building? Not a concrete burn building, not some Connex boxes, not any of that shit that we normally get here in New Jersey or we get, you know, in other
anywhere
places.
In the country.
Yeah,
I mean,
most places.